Japanese horror is fairly well known in the modern internet age for its surrealism, morbid concepts, weird plot evolutions, and just being all around creepy. These concepts translated well into the survival horror genre. When I say survival horror, that has already triggered your brain to think of several different games. The genre was not only invented by Japanese game developers, but would be later pioneered in the late 90s by Japanese game developers as well. The term itself is almost synonymous with the words Japanese horror, at the very least acts as a core pillar to its foundation. When getting into playing survival horror games, you do what anyone else does and go for the classics, the staples of the genre, the gold standards that all the gamers cry, piss, and come about. It's very cliche at this point for a retro video game reviewer to talk about the obscure horror game that you've never heard of before, and yeah, that's exactly what this is. Today I'm looking at the PS1 game Hellnight, or Dark Messiah as it was known in Japan. Now I imagine when releasing it outside of Japan, they had to change the name of it from Dark Messiah to Hellnight because a game on the store shelves that read out as Antichrist probably wouldn't have settled well with parents. Then again, outside of Japan, the game got a PAL release with no North American release, so who knows. Hellnight, or Dark Messiah, was developed and published by Atlas Games, although when the PAL release came out, it got distributed by Konami in 1998. I wasn't really sure what to expect from this game, and I'll be honest with you, I was thoroughly surprised by what this obscure horror entry in the PS1's catalog had for me. So I guess strap in as I talk about Hellnight, or Dark Messiah. So Hellnight is a first-person adventure survival horror light. I say survival horror light as there isn't much in the way of supplies to manage, and there really isn't any urgency to the gameplay the majority of the time. If you're familiar with the From Software PS1 games like Kingsfield, Shadow Tower, or Echo Knight, then you'll understand the playstyle. You spend most of your time wandering around looking for solutions to obstacles in your way, finding keys, giving items to certain NPCs, or using items on the environment. Pretty standard stuff, although it's done well enough where you as the player can find the solutions fairly easy. The story, from what I can piece together, is that there's a military facility built underground of a futuristic Tokyo. The facility is referred to as the Mesh. The Mesh was abandoned and inhabited by a group of people who wanted to leave their lives behind, as well as a group of religious fanatics called the Holy Ring. These fanatics actually chase us into the subway, forcing us to get onto a train. Said train then gets derailed by a monster, causing a huge crash. In the wreckage we find Naomi, a schoolgirl scared out of her mind. A monster appears chasing us into a subway tunnel, which leads us to a military group tasked with shooting anything that moves. You and Naomi flee to the sewers, and that's where the game starts. The narrative is very elusive as you play it. You only get various tidbits from NPCs, and all of it doesn't really add up until the end where, surprise, shit gets peculiar. Expect nonsensical stuff when playing Hellnight, like giving an NPC a special bottle of alcohol only to have them die after drinking it, then fall over, exposing a secret passage to progress the game. You have the monsters that belong to the Hive that can convert anything organic or non-organic into usable material to further reproduce and evolve. Kinda like that one episode of Justice League Unlimited. Your character is here purely due to circumstance, or at least so it would seem. You do have a strong connection to the narrative that isn't revealed till way later. The other companions in the game have varying degrees of significance in the plot, and I won't spoil them completely. Kamiya is a serial killer who fled the Mesh after having some voices telling him to head down there. There is Ivanov, a soldier that was part of a team tasked with exterminating the Hive monsters. Renee, a journalist looking into the kidnappings committed by the Holy Ring cult. Naomi is just there. She's basically a completely unfortunate teenage girl that's just stuck here. Depending on the companion, you get different endings, and there's even an ending for being companionless, although I will say I wasn't too keen on going back and getting the other endings after my initial playthrough. That's less for how the story unfolds and more how the moment-to-moment gameplay actually feels, which is a great segue into the gameplay and presentation. Hellnight gives us some very of-the-time 3D FMV cutscenes with audio. Well, sorta. The weird part is the PAL version lacks the Japanese voice acting, although I found a patch that puts that audio back in the game. Although the voice lines are only in cutscenes, most of the game's dialogue and story is told through these text boxes. This method was pretty common for this genre, so I won't complain too much about it. I mean, my only real complaint is that a lot of NPCs just appear without any introduction and leave just as fast. As far as menus are concerned, everything is stylized enough with various sound effects to add to the atmosphere. The sound design of the menus are nice, but the gameplay can feel somewhat empty. The music presented is incredibly tense, with some pieces feeling Silent Hill-like. With that being said, there aren't any walking sound effects and very few environmental sound effects either. You do get the breathing and movement of the monster that chases you around, but all the other audio, including the music, cuts out when the monster is pursuing you. There are times where no audio is present at all. Yes, this could lead to a feeling of isolation, however, I feel a better use of audio design could really strengthen certain areas of the game. Gameplay-wise, it's almost shockingly simple. You move around the 3D environments looking for items, talking to NPCs, and searching for secret paths. You as the player can't attack the monsters chasing you, nor can Naomi, who acts as your first companion. I say combat is basically non-existent. She's killed or kidnapped. Companions act as a shield from the monsters because in Hellnight, you die in one hit. Your companions die in one hit too. The other companions do have the advantage of having a gun with limited ammo. There isn't a way to track the ammo, which means you have to wait until the character through dialogue tells you how much ammo they have. This was really silly and caught me off guard the first time I saw it.
I got 15 rounds left. Why are you saying it like that? Hold on. I don't like you giving me a number.
Don't be worried about the limited ammo because the AI of the monster that chases you around is pretty easy to move around. Sometimes you can just walk away and then go straight back. The monster will just leave. I'm not really sure how the monster's AI completely works, but it's pretty manageable. So you'll notice that the gameplay loop is pretty fast with this one. You go into a new area, talk to everyone that you can, you go and search every door, find every item, bring various items to NPCs, they'll give you other items to bring to another NPC, you get key or object that will progress you to the next area. Inherently this isn't bad game design, but it gets monotonous pretty quick. I don't want to seem unfairly critical of a game that came out during the PS1 era. Last thing I want to be is that guy that makes unfair criticisms when there is a hardware limitation or a snag in the development process. With that being said, Hellnight moves too fucking slow. That's both in a pacing and physical movement kind of way. Clearly this game wants you to focus on the story and world building, which the story is interesting to say the least. The slow delivery of the narrative points is only exacerbated by the movement itself. You can sprint in Hellnight for a limited time. Sprinting too long will cause the screen to flash red, cause your heart to beat really fast, and force you to a slower walking speed. This would naturally seem like a way to balance out the ability to run from your enemies. Although, if you remember what I said earlier, the AI isn't hard to manage, and sometimes it doesn't even show up. There are plenty of times we'll be walking around completely unbothered with zero threat, meaning you just have to touch every door till you find the right thing. On a side note, whoever decided that there needed to be rooms that have nothing in them should seek therapy. As minor as this might seem, it makes backtracking to find an item you missed more time consuming and was a frequent inconvenience for the entire game. To add more to the time wasting, each area just feels unnecessarily big with hallways that feel like they're there for the hell of it. Sometimes the game ends up with you holding and releasing the sprint button back and forth down a long hallway just so you can return an item. Keep in mind, I was still interested where the game was going. I have patience for slower paced games. I feel most players would lose interest pretty fast, but then again, patience is something you should have already factored in when tackling a retro Japanese game from the 90s. Originally, I wanted to go through this story beat by beat, but then I realized something. That's all Hellnight really has, is its story. Its gameplay is really too restrictive for me to recommend it, but I do think what the game tries to talk about and show is worth talking about. Although, watching a YouTube playthrough, or even checking out my stream that I did of it, is almost the same as playing the game yourself. And that's really sad to say, because I do think this game has some interesting things to it, narratively speaking. Critiquing the narrative and its structure, pace, acting, even though there's not much in it, and writing really wouldn't mean much, because that's not exactly what this game is going for, I think. I think it's going more for an experience, or a vibe, if you will, less than it's going for a narrative that's supposed to take you through an emotional process. It aims for surrealism. It aims to not have exact answers to the things that you're looking for. And in that respect, I kinda like the game, but I also don't like playing it. The topics touched on in Hellnight are all over the place. You have the modernization of Japan leading to a clash of the old and new. You have darker subjects like self-harm and animal cruelty. It even has the trope where you separate the consciousness from the body. It's messy and poorly paced with not much in the way of rewarding gameplay. I'm fine with first-person adventure games like Kingsfield or even Baroque, because at least those have satisfying game loops that make you feel rewarded for understanding how those systems work. I know both of those have RPG elements, so maybe it's not fair to directly compare them. The comparison I want to draw is the fulfillingness of playing the game. Putting aside taste or generic game is goated or game is doo-doo dog water simplifications, a game should be fulfilling. I know this isn't a typical way to end a game review, but go seek out a Let's Play or just watch my VODs that I have, the blind playthrough I did on stream. If you made it this far, thank you. You didn't have to watch this, and that's super cool that you did. Consider subscribing. It really helps out. It lets me know that I'm doing something that people find interesting, which is really cool if you do that. If not, hey, I'm here either way. If you feel so kind to do so, and I hope to see you in the not too distant future.